Hi dear friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel, The Ana and the Book Hunt. I think I have a treat for you today because I'm going to be talking about audiobooks and specifically audiobooks that are available to listen to on Storytel. Now, last year I did a short video where I'm explaining the merits of Storytel as a subscription service. I'm going to link it up in the cards if you want to check it out later. I'm going to do a short intro on what Storytel is and tell you which books I've absolutely loved picking up through this service and why I think if you haven't researched it yet, it's definitely worth your time and worth your money as well. This is in no way sponsored. This is not a partnership with Storytel. I'm not getting paid for this. I just have been using Storytel for quite a while and I really find that it's worth my money. So I want to share it with you. If you're not familiar with the subscription service, that you can research it and see whether it's going to be worth your while as well, especially if you're an audiobook lover like myself. I think it's quite a good alternative to Audible, because Audible, while there's a lot available on Audible, basically everything is available on Audible, but it's quite expensive. Even if you get the Audible Plus subscription, which I recently did, but I'm really considering unsubscribing from it because it's really expensive. I pay about 15 euros every month and I only get one credit, which equals one book. And then I get access to their like Audible Plus library, but most of the audiobooks that are available on there are also actually available on Storytel. So I don't think that it's worth my money to invest. What I think I'm going to do in the future is just stay subscribed to Storytel, and whenever there is an audiobook that I really want to listen to that is not available to me on Storytel, or my other subscriptions that I have, I'm going to go ahead and purchase it just as a single purchase on Audible. It may be a bit expensive, but then at least I've only paid for that one audiobook, which I typically would do with the one credit of Audible, right? So I think that that is more logical for me, because just to give you an intro on Storytel, Storytel is a subscription service that very similarly works like Netflix. So you pay your subscription service for the month and you get access to their entire library. And they have a very extended library. I've been using this service for, I think, almost 3 years. And if I check the the number of books that I've read, it's quite an extensive list. I think I've listened to maybe 200 audiobooks through the subscription service, and it's all been for, what do I pay? I think I pay about 7 euros a month. So just to do a quick math, if I pay 7 euros a month and I listen to at least 5 books a month, at least. This is like the lowest number that I've had in the past, but typically I'll pick up maybe 5 to 10, and sometimes really it's 10 books, and then I pay only 7 euros. So you can see that most of the time it's not even a euro that I pay for each book, and that's really worth it to me. This subscription service has just worked for me. I think it's worth the money and the time to research it. And just a quick note here, if you're watching this from the United States, I think that in the US the only way to get Storytel is if you use a VPN. I don't think it's very difficult to do, and VPNs typically are not very expensive. So even if you invest in purchasing a VPN connection, it's still cheaper than using Audible. And I think when you do it through the US, you can choose the location that your VPN is going to be set in, and then you can even get a more extensive library, because where I am, I'm getting more books in my native language, unfortunately not as many in English. I think if you do like an Indian VPN, you get the Indian setting on it, and then you can get a very extensive library for Storytel, very much similarly like Netflix. So Netflix in the US will have a different library than if you're in the UK, for example. So very similarly works like Netflix. So without further ado, what I'm going to talk about today, just to tell you, is books that I've been loving that are available on Storytel. Specifically, I've been loving these books because of the way that they're narrated. So here I'm going to talk about favorite narrators, favorite ways of narration. So there's a couple of books here that, for example, are narrated in Duet. and there's a couple of them that are full cast, and just a couple of different things that make the audiobook really worth it to pick up over maybe the physical copy or the ebook. So I'm going to focus on those things here, and also on the books that you can get through Storytel. So if you're not subscribed yet, you can check it out and see whether it's worth your while. And if you are subscribed and you didn't know that these books are available to you, you can go ahead and research them and add them to your TBR, essentially, because I think you're going to love them as much as I did. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into the books because there's a lot of books that I want to recommend here. So the first book is probably one of my favorites of last year. It's Forget Me Not by Julie Soto, and this one is actually narrated by two very well-loved narrators in the romance community. The narrator who does the male part actually is probably the most famous narrator that we have, and that is Teddy Hamilton. The female part is done by Callie Dalton, and she's also very well loved. And just a side note here, one thing that I love about Storytel is that it's so user-friendly. It's very easy to use. So for example, when I listen to Forget Me Not, and I saw that it's narrated by Teddy Hamilton, I can click on Teddy Hamilton's name, and then it will show me all of the books that are available in the Storytel library that are narrated by this narrator. So I can also, if I really enjoy this narrator's voice and how they perform, then I can pick up other books by this narrator, that are done by this narrator at least. So in that way, I'm discovering new books that maybe weren't on my radar as well. So that is a great feature on the app as well. And when it comes to Forget Me Not, I really loved it because the way that the audiobook is set up, obviously the actual book is set up in the same way, but it just is so much more impactful, I think, in the audiobook format, that the present chapters are done in the female perspective. So Kelly Dalton is narrating the present chapters, and then the past chapters are done through the male point of view. So Teddy Hamilton is doing the past chapters in that audiobook. And for me, that really worked. I really love that setting within the book, and I really hope that more audiobooks are going to do that if they have the present and past settings, because it just hits you differently in some way. I really, really enjoyed this audiobook, and I definitely recommend that you pick it up as an audiobook. And then one that I just recently read that is done in duet narration is A Soul to Keep by Opal Reyne. Duet narration means that the lines that are done for the female character are read by the female narrator, and then the male parts are done by the male narrator. So there is no switch between like the female narrator doing one chapter and then the male narrator doing another chapter, where they need to pretend to be a man or a woman when they're doing dialogue. Within duet narration, everyone reads their own lines. So it really is more like almost like a radio play back in the day, or in a movie. So that one is just so much more interactive when you listen to it, and I really loved it. The narrators for this one are Elise Hoffman and Wolfgang Milliken. I have to say that the male narrator for this one has such an intensely deep voice. And because this is a monster romance, we've got a demon actually here who is the main character. It was just such a fitting voice for that specific character. I was blown away by this audiobook. I immensely enjoyed it. It's definitely worth it to pick it up through an audiobook format. And I really flew through it. The fact that it was duet, the fact that the male narrator just did such a splendid job, I absolutely love this audiobook. Next up, I'm going to talk about a couple of extremely famous books, and those are ones that, if you haven't read yet, are definitely worth it exploring in an audiobook format. The first one being the Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows books. This is a duet by Rebecca Ross. Divine Rivals really hit big numbers, so it hit a lot of hype basically last year, and this year, the beginning of this year, the second book came out, that is Ruthless Vows. The book is done also in duet, and it's narrated by Alex Wingfield and Rebecca Norfolk. And I really found that the narrators were very well picked for this specific type of book, because it's fantasy, kind of a magical fantasy, but within a historical setting. And it's just done so well. I found that the female narrator for this book was just outstanding. I was so immersed into the story by the way that they were narrating. It was more like storytelling than acting. It was really fitting for the type of book that was narrated, and I really highly recommend it to pick it up through audiobook. And then another two books that, or it's actually a series that I need to mention. The first one being the Akatar series by Sarah J. Maas. So A Court of Thorns and Roses is the first book, A Court of Mist and Fury is the second book, and A Court of Wings and Ruin is the third book. And actually those are available on Storytel with the dramatized adaptation, which means that they are available in full cast narration, and the audiobook production is really more like almost like a movie production. So you have sound effects, you have really full cast narration, so it's almost something between a radio play and a movie, but without the visual. So it's a very interesting production. I'm going to be picking this up sometime. I don't know when, but I definitely want to read it as a dramatized adaptation, because I read the original, so I didn't read this type of a setting, and I'm really intrigued by it. And another dramatized adaptation that is coming out in February this year on Storytel is going to be the first book of the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas, and I'm definitely going to explore this series through this dramatized adaptation because it sounds like the best way to go. I think it's going to make all the much more difference when I read it through that medium. So I definitely am looking forward to the release of that one. Next, I'm going to mention a couple of books that I've really loved because specifically the narrators have worked for me. And when I've loved the narrator, I'm going to be picking up more books that are narrated by them. The first one being What We Broke by Marley Valentine. This is a male-male romance and it's very emotional. It's a marriage and trouble story and it's narrated by Joe Arden and Teddy Hamilton. Obviously, Teddy Hamilton doesn't need any more introduction because everyone in the romance community who is reading audiobooks is aware of Teddy Hamilton, but Joe Arden is also one of the very famous narrators for romance audiobooks. And both of them have done a lot of male-male books together and they just work really well. Another series that I've loved with amazing narration is the Twisted series by Ana Huang. All of the books are done by Cindy Kay and Aidan Snow. Aidan Snow has, again, a very deep male voice that is very much enticing. I don't know what it is about his voice, but it's just smooth like butter, but at the same time on a very deep level. So you can definitely imagine that if, for example, the guy is like almost like a mafia or some kind of like a bad boy guy, specifically Alex in the first book, it just fits his voice so well. I don't know, you just imagine that this is exactly the kind of voice that Alex would have. So yeah, I really loved that series done by these audiobook narrators. And then one thing that I have to say about audiobooks is that whenever they're narrated by only one narrator, it's very important that whether it's a male or a female narrator, that they do the opposite sex voice well, otherwise it can really put you off. And one book that I really enjoyed that was done very well for both the male and female part by a female narrator is Mickey Chambers Shakes It Up by Charish Reid. This one is narrated by Marissa Hampton, and I found that the male voice was very well done by this female narrator, and it really didn't bother me that there is no second narrator within this audiobook. I immensely enjoyed it despite it having only one narrator to narrate both of the parts. So I definitely would recommend this audiobook as well. And then another series that is narrated only by one narrator is the Darkside series by Kristy Cunning. There is 4 short books within this series. And this series is overall just so much fun. There is so much humor within it, and it's just It's a hoot. This whole series, I absolutely loved it. And the way that it was narrated by Holly Jackson was just so splendidly done. I think that this audiobook narrator has such a talent for bringing these kinds of stories where you have humor within them in the best possible way. I absolutely love this series on audiobook format. If you haven't read it yet, definitely pick it up through Storytel with an audiobook format. Another duet that I want to mention is by Kandi Steiner, the What He Doesn't Know and What He Always Knew duet, because within this plot we've got a love triangle and we've got three narrators, so each of the characters that is a main character within the book is represented through the narration of it. We've got Sebastian York, we've got Erin Mallon, and we've got Jason Clark. So all three of these narrators are favorites of mine, specifically Erin Mallon. I love Erin Mallon also because she writes as well, and she does audio plays as well, and those are really splendid. But all three of them just have such a talent for narration. I found that this was an angsty story, and obviously because it involves cheating and love triangles and stuff, it just needed the right type of attention to the heaviness and emotional sides within the story, and these three narrators just kicked the ball out of the park. It was just so well done. I really would recommend it. So decisions that are made for some audiobooks are very important, and they can be a hit or a miss decision. But within the next one I'm going to mention, which is a newer release by Sierra Simone, I found that the decision that was made to do the audiobooks in the way that they were done, I found it a splendid decision. We've got Salt Wound, which is a novella that prequels Salt Kiss. Salt Wound is narrated by a female narrator, by Isabel Ruther. And then Salt Kiss is narrated by Oscar Reyes. So there is only one narrator per book. But because we've got more emphasis in the novella on the female character, the first book is narrated by the female character. And then the second book is really focusing on the two male characters that are the focal point of the story that is going to continue on. So we've got the male narrator in the situation, and I'm very curious to see the next book, which is going to be Honeycut, whether it's going to be duet narration or maybe just two narrators doing each of the parts. I'm just very curious on how it's going to be done. Right now, I really appreciated that it was done in this way, and I really love the stories as well, and I definitely would recommend them in audio. You all know that I need to recommend a Kennedy Ryan book on here, and because Queen Move is not very hyped up, I'm going to mention Queen Move in this one. There are other books by Kennedy Ryan available on Storytel. You can go ahead and check them out, but Queen Move is definitely available, and they're narrated by Ebony Flowers and Jacob E. Diem. I really love both of these narrators. I've read quite a few stories that are narrated by Jacob E. Diem, and I just think that he's one of the top tier narrators in the romance genre. So I'm going to be picking up everything that I can get my hands on. And that's the beautiful feature about Storytel, that you can explore other stories that are narrated by this narrator. So this one I definitely recommend. And then two books that have been favorites of mine last year, Mile High and The Right Move by Liz Tomforde, have recently released on Storytel as well. Mile High is done by Winston James and Marie. And then The Right Move is done by Sean Crisden and Juniper Young. Actually, I'm planning on doing a reread whenever I get a bit slumpish throughout the year, and I'm going to be reading the audiobook and then annotating my physical copies along with the audiobook, and I can't wait to do that. I'm really looking forward to listening to the audios as well. So those are available on Storytel as well. And then books that I discovered last year. So there is a full series by A.H. Cunningham, starting with Plie. Those are done by Sean Moore and Soraya Banks. Those are really spicy books that have BDSM elements in them, but they're just done so well. I just flew through the audiobook, and I would highly recommend it if you haven't picked up these books that you do them on audio, because they're just splendid. And then I just recently finished the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey. They're all available. All 5 novellas are available on Storytel, and they're done by Marie Hawkins and T.J. Clark. I have to give it to the female narrator within this book. She has done such a splendid job with the female narration. I absolutely loved it. Even though she had to cover the male parts, she did kind of like this little rasp within the male voice that really made you get into the story from the male perspective, even though she is narrating it, if you get what I'm saying. I really love that when the female narrator can do that. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And then the last book I'm going to mention on here is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonam Young. Actually, all of the books that are released by Hannah Bonam Young, with the exception of her holiday-themed novella, are available through Storytel. But Out on a Limb just recently came out, and it's done by Victoria Connolly. I read it on audio. I absolutely fell in love with the story, but also the way that it was narrated. It really fitted the... it's like a very low angst story, and the way that it was narrated was just exactly fitting the mood of the story and the pace of the story. So it just made sense for me that I picked it up through audiobook format. I was waiting for it to come out on audio, to be honest. I didn't want to read the ebook for it. So I'm very happy that I did, because it made me appreciate the story all the more. So yeah, I'm gushing about all of these audiobooks because honestly, they have made a difference for me. I think I've loved the stories even more because of the way that they were narrated. So it's such an important job for us as book lovers to support the narrators and not only the authors, because obviously the stories are created by our favorite authors, but the way that they're brought to life by this community of narrators is just a different kind of art form and a different kind of job that we need to appreciate as readers, because they are just a league of their own, right? I mean, they deserve all the love and all of the attention that we can give to them. So I hope that with this video, I can get you to find new audiobooks that you want to pick up, whether it be through Storytel or another subscription service, or even if you can find them through your library. I would love for you to discover these stories on audiobook format, because I've really loved them that way specifically, and I hope that you do too. Please let me know if you have any audiobooks to recommend to me that I need to look up because of the way that they are done, that you have loved, that I need to discover as well, because I love discovering new stories that are done so well on audio, because they are very memorable for me. I really remember each and every one of these stories, even though some of them I've read quite a while ago. Just the way that they were done have left an impression on me. So I hope that you discover the love of audiobooks. If you haven't yet through this video, I hope that if you have discovered the love for audio, that you can get some recommendations off of it, and also that you can discover some new narrators that you can maybe discover. So I hope again you have enjoyed this video. Please put a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Go ahead and check out Storytel. I'm going to link the Storytel website where you can check out what the subscription looks like. I'll link it down in the description box. And let me know if you have any questions about Storytel that I may be able to answer, because I've been using the subscription service for quite a long time, so I may be able to answer some questions for you. And I hope to see you in the next one. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Take care, and